Okay, maybe Sonia's going to unfreeze. We're going to dive in.
Sorry,
Oh,
I've
there
lost
you are. Yeah, where are you connecting from?
Montreal, Canada.
Oh, come on, how cool is this? We have Canada, Australia, South US. I'm in the Northeast.
We're
And
missing Europe and Africa now.
yes, but there are a lot more people registered who just aren't on here live, or at least not right now. Maybe they'll come on. So that's the beauty of this, which I love. So first of all, before we dive in, I want to, well, let me introduce myself in case you are new. You just came across the marketing piece for this somewhere and you've never been on a workshop before. Welcome. My name is Linda Downey and I do transformational health and spiritual whole life coaching for people. And every month there's a workshop. So if this is the first time you ever saw it, welcome to this one. And you'll definitely check your email. If, check your spam box. If you don't see it, you'll get the recording sent to you. And if you're in the healing circle, you always have access to a whole library of workshops that I've done. Um, and if not, that, you have access to this one for a limited amount of time. It'll probably be through next week because a few people have asked me for a longer chance to watch the replay. So I'll keep the link live for the non-healing circle people up through next week. Okay. And so if you're here or whenever you're listening live or later, I just really want to acknowledge you because this particular workshop is a tough topic. Sometimes the workshops I think are really fun. And I think this will be fun. Thanks, Sonia. I think it'll be fun because we're gonna talk about it and we're gonna get some insights and everything. But the topic itself is not easy. Just as human beings, it's really tough sometimes to forgive. So I had shared a video that myself and my ex-husband did about 4 years ago on the topic of forgiveness. I don't know if you saw that, but that was hopefully to inspire you because we had a lot of hurt, a lot of betrayal, a lot of conflict in our marriage. Our marriage didn't last, and our friendship now is stronger than it ever was in our marriage. But that's because of the work we did, and forgiveness was a big part of it, which is why I really feel strongly about it. This topic is one of many that I do in the Return to You program. In that program, we spend about 3 coaching sessions at least on this, and everybody's doing work in between each session as well. But this is going to give you a good introduction to all of it. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. And sorry, my nose is itchy. Um, so what I have learned in my training, particularly in my whole life coach training, is that there are 3 things that really block us from having a life that feels joyful, from having good health. So interestingly enough, this definitely impacts your health, especially if you have chronic things like gut issues and autoimmune. I want you to pay attention. But the experience of prosperity and joy and connection in your relationships, there's 3 things that will block that. And those 3 categories are negative beliefs that you have about yourself, about life, about all kinds of things, but subconscious negative beliefs is one. Harmful actions, which are the things that we do to cope, particularly when we have the negative beliefs. So we take on harmful actions, that's going to block us. And then the third thing is unforgiveness. So when we hold unforgiveness in our spirit, in our heart, in how we go through life, it actually blocks all of those things: joy, connection, prosperity, health. All right. So I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way, of it being that impactful or not. But as we do some of the exercises, hopefully you'll see some of that for yourself. In the different work that I've done, I've come across a lot of experts in the field that talk about the connection to health. Dr. Ben Johnson, you can Google him. I think he's passed away actually, but I'm sorry, my nose is driving me crazy. Hold on. It's like I got a tickle. I think it's from my dog. Um, he's an oncologist who had said that he never felt, never met a patient of his, now oncologist means cancer, never met a patient that did not have a forgiveness problem. So as he worked with his patients, and he's an MD, and a DO, he's got a couple of other initials after his name, but a medical doctor who was an oncologist. Colin Tippings, who wrote the book Radical Forgiveness, who I think has also passed away, but he used to run cancer workshops with his wife, and they were like long weekends, maybe Thursday to a Sunday, and it was for only for cancer patients. And the entire weekend they worked on forgiveness, which is about, you know, several sessions that I do with my clients as well, because it's not a one and done, and it's oftentimes not easy. And when you have something big enough to hold in your body that actually makes you sick, it can take a lot to work on releasing that. So I just want to say that up front, because if this workshop inspires you to go on and really dig into forgiveness even more, it's going to take a few times. Let me just ask you, have any of you ever taken on forgiveness before? Is this the first cut, you know, that you've done in your life? Has anybody, you know, grappled with it? Seems like no. Vanessa?
Um, well, yeah. I mean, when I went through my divorce a long time ago, um, yeah, like I was the one that forgave him. I mean, I felt like I had forgiveness, but he didn't forgive me. So, and that caused a lot. That was hard because when the other person's not forgiving you, but you're forgiving them, yeah, that's on another level, because you're then taking on, well, do you want to, yeah, it's hard when I feel like I've forgiven but they hadn't forgiven me, so then it's another level, isn't it?
Yes, and here's a perspective you could consider, that if you go into forgiveness, regardless of what the other person ever does or says, whether they ever give you an apology or not, whether they participate or not, but that the forgiveness is actually for you, having nothing to do with them. And that's the
Okay.
place we're going to continue to work, like from that train of thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see how that kind of shifts it a little bit? Like, well, he didn't forgive me, so, you know, it kind of diminished how I felt about it. But it really doesn't need to be anything that the other person does. So we'll dig in
Okay.
more.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the Lord's Prayer, this is the only thing that Jesus addresses twice in the Lord's Prayer. Does he talk about forgiveness, which to my mind speaks to the fact that he thought it was a pretty important thing. And I reference Jesus not so much from a Christianity point of view, but from his insights as a man and how he taught us about living. I mean, Christianity does also, you know, emphasize forgiveness, I think, most of the time, and that we want to be forgiven by God, etc. But Jesus, the person, what he taught throughout his life had such huge impact and wisdom. And so when I look particularly at what Jesus said in the Bible compared to maybe what some of the other disciples or whatever said, that to me has huge impact. So I want you to consider, if you have taken on forgiveness before,
Mhm.
did you
Yeah.
actually forgive? Oh, Sonia, sorry. Did you want to say something?
Well, I've already done some work, and I exactly know the people, that I need to work for the forgiveness. The difficulty is just getting there because the how can I say, the past trauma keeps coming back, and it's really hard.
So when you
So
say,
I don't want to feel the sadness anymore. I don't. So like I said, I've done some forgiveness. I've worked on it, on myself, forgiving the other person. Like you said, not expecting the other person to forgive me back. One person is passed away anyways. So, um, but the situations that happened in the past, it's for me, they were so traumatic. It's hard to
I,
really feel a release on all that.
yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up because there is, so there's the forgiveness, and it was exactly what I was just about to say, honestly, is that we can forgive on a conscious level, but there has to be a lot of releasing in the body, especially when things have been more traumatic, because the emotions, especially if it's been like years and it took you a while to decide to forgive, or even not, but emotions can be really
Mm.
stuck in the body. And the imprint of that on your nervous system and in your body itself,
Mm-hmm.
all of that has to happen at the same time as the conscious choice to forgive. Otherwise, you're still pulled back into the trauma of it, is exactly what you're saying. I had a client probably a year or so ago who said, yeah, I've forgiven my mom. I understand everything. She was an alcoholic and she had this issue and that issue, and I
Yeah.
forgave a long time ago. And I said, but let's just look, because you forgave her consciously, but how it's still in your life is the things that you decided about yourself because of her actions and her behaviors are still running your life. Like you didn't release those, and you didn't release the stuck emotions. So that is
Yeah.
the whole part of the picture that I did want to really make sure you all, understood, so that if you continue from tonight to keep on working on forgiveness, you keep that in mind. That's very important. So let me
And
ask you, oh,
there's
sorry, go ahead.
one other little thing. When it's something that happened with somebody that you're not seeing anymore,
Mm-hmm.
somebody that's out of your life or has passed, oh, okay, well, I'll forgive, but, I won't see them anymore. Even if you don't see them anymore, you can still keep the unforgiveness just the same. But not that it's harder, but when it's your family, often it's our family, I guess. But like right now, there's just a whole situation, and it concerns my daughter and the whole family thing.
Mm.
So yeah, I know that now is the time, and I have to get through this because I have to travel and see my mother and the family end of June. So I don't want to take all the time.
No,
Hopefully,
that's
I think
okay.
I'm going to have to be doing, after we do all this, I'm going to have to do some, but I know I have to get to the end of this. It's just such
Yeah,
a
well,
burden.
we can talk about that. And I'm sure you're not the only one, whether it's here live or people watching the replay. I'm sure you're not the only one who feels that way, of course. And definitely, if we are still around people who do things and behave in a certain way that is upsetting and hurtful and all of that. One thing I'm going to offer you to think about is you being the one. So here's all these players in the family, right?
Mhm.
All of these people who are doing what they're doing and whatever the conflict is. And
Yes.
if there could be one person that's going to be, instead of part of the storm, separate themselves out of the storm and practice the forgiveness as the point of healing for the family.
Yeah.
Um,
The Joseph of your family. That's kind of an
yeah.
expression that we use in Christian circles because
Yes. So you
Joseph forgave all his family, his brothers, for the atrocity that they had done to him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can look at it that way, because instead of
Mhm.
getting pulled into the drama and being part of it, and we're going to do a couple of like exercises, a couple of questions in a moment that
Okay.
might kind of lead you in that direction as well. But let me
Okay.
ask you first, for everybody who, if you have a piece of paper, you might want to jot this down. What is your definition of forgiveness? What does that look like?
Mm.
And you can share it out loud if you want to, but you don't need to. I just want you to get really clear. Like, what does that mean to you?
Can I go ahead and say my definition?
Of course.
Well, for me, forgiveness is when the actions, whether they were, justified or not, because that person, actions or words, whatever, did to you that hurt you, when you forgive them, the thought of the person or the actions or words doesn't bring any more pain, negative emotions. Let's just leave it at any negative emotions.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be all happy about them, but you're neutral. You can choose to be happy about them and to love them, but you can also just be neutral, I guess. That's
Yeah,
where
I
I'm
like that. Yeah, so what you're saying is there's no more negative charge. There's no response in your body, no more negative charge when you think of them or of the incident that happened,
no more
right?
anger, no more crying, no more. Those are all
Okay.
negative emotions.
Okay. So that would be like an outcome of forgiveness, right? Is I'm no longer having that negative impact. Um, Here's some things that I think forgiveness is not. It's not condoning anybody's behavior, right? It's not saying the behavior was okay or even accepting more of the same kind of behavior. Don't need to do that at all either. It's not letting that person continue to hurt you, but it is letting them off the hook. And by doing that, you're letting yourself off the hook. It's really, here's how I'd like to present it for you tonight is it's really your own self-interest. It has very little to do with that person. We all have somebody, we all have a person, we all have a thing, we all have many things that we could go to work on forgiveness. It's not about any of them, any one of them, and all of them. It's about us and getting ourselves off the hook of the impact of it. That's how I look at forgiveness. So it's not releasing the perpetrator from their crime, so to speak, or from the bad behavior, but it is releasing you. And as long as you refuse to forgive, or even if you're not refusing, but you're like, okay, I want to, but I just can't, as long as you're in that space, you're tied to that person. So, like Vanessa, for you talking about your ex-husband, I mean, I have no idea about him, right? But it's possible that if he's never forgiven you, whatever happened in your marriage, when your name comes up, do you have children with him?
Yeah, we have a daughter.
Okay. So he's still like you still have to be in each other's lives. And so for him, he's forever tied to that, to like Sonia said, to the negative emotions, unless he's gotten himself to forgive by this point, you know. But we tie ourselves to the person in a negative way, and we tie ourselves energetically, even if we never see them anymore. So many times the person is not suffering at all by our unforgiveness, but we definitely are suffering. Okay, so just pick one person, one issue right now that you want to take a look at. We're not going to do the full work on it because it takes a few hours and it takes, it's a whole process, at least what I do. But yes, a soul tie. You're energetically tied to someone. Um, especially honestly, if they're family ties, if you've had children with them, or if, they're part of your family of origin, there's an energy there that needs to be addressed in order to really be free. And if there's an energy of anger and blame and hurt and betrayal, that's the energy that's there. So that's going to really impact your health your ability to go forward with other relationships, your ability to be fully free to be happy. Okay. So pick one person or one experience, all right? And just jot that down. It doesn't have to be the worst one ever that you've ever had, but just something that you want to kind of walk through as we go through this conversation. So for this particular person, have you tried yet to forgive them? Just yes or no. You don't have to say it out loud. And if you've never tried, or if you tried and stopped, what was it that you found difficult? What was the most difficult thing? So was it you couldn't move past your anger? Was it in your head you were like, it was wrong. They shouldn't have done that. I can't forgive them. Like logically how you think about it. What's the thing?
Can I just say,
Sure.
for me, um, in my current relationship right now, my partner's done some things which I'm working towards forgiving. But what I'm finding hard is that, and it's sad, is that um, like it's presented as like my feelings now have changed for him, which, yeah, I guess that's a challenging thing. And it's very confrontational in the fact that, um, uh, yeah, it's, yeah, just sad. Yeah,
So
I just
you
want to say
have,
that.
yeah, that's okay. You know what?
Mm,
That's a really good point, Vanessa. For all of us, as you're going through this process, grief, I think, is often part of the process. You have to grieve, maybe the betrayal, or it sounds like for you, grieving the realization that your feelings have changed. So
yeah,
it might be that. It might be grieving the ending of a relationship, but acknowledging. So whether it's anger or grief or sadness or betrayal, but acknowledging the emotions that are there is very important. Allow yourself, like, wow, what am I feeling? What is that telling me? Oh, I don't know why I'm so itchy.
yeah.
With that. Oh, excuse me. Well, maybe that'll fix it. Okay. So when you think about this issue or this person, do you feel resistance in your body, like the resistance to forgiving? Do you feel irritated? Try to identify what's there. Try to be as specific as you can. Now, I want you to just sit for a minute. I like to close my eyes because I want to take away the sensory input of my vision and just go into the body. And as you think about this person or this situation, where do you feel it in your body? So just notice, take a minute. Is it like a heaviness in your stomach, in the pit of your stomach? Is it a tightening in your stomach? Is it something up here in your chest, like over your heart, or maybe up by your throat? So just get present and write it down. When I think of this, I feel it in my wherever. Okay. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much is this issue affecting your thoughts and emotions on a regular basis right now? So is it like you rarely stop thinking about it? You go over it a lot in your mind all day long? That would be a 10. if it's, I haven't really thought about it, or I don't really think about it unless I'm in a conversation about it, maybe it's a 2, how often you think about it. So we're getting a handle on how is it still impacting you. And for like Vanessa, you're in the middle of a situation, or it sounds like Sonia, you are too, in a situation like there's things unfolding, there's things still happening. So forgiveness might be one part of what needs to happen, right? Like forgiveness may not solve the whole problem. There's still things to figure out. There's still, issues and conflict that need to be dealt with. So it's not like forgiveness, if it's a current ongoing thing, is going to be the only piece. But whatever you picked, just look at the forgiveness part of it. What's the strongest emotion? So when you go into your body and you let yourself be present to your body and you notice where you feel what you feel, now ask yourself, what is really there? What am I feeling? Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it fear? Part of what stops us from forgiving is we don't let the emotions move through. So by getting present and acknowledging them and connecting to them, you're going to allow them to move through, which is going to help you forgive. Sonia, are you okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm okay. I'm okay. It's just um coincidence would have it that I was just talking about this for about an hour's time before we did the call. So
Okay.
I'm like, I was already in the whole mindset, if you wish.
Yeah. So
You
it's very present for you right now. But you know what? Maybe that's actually a good thing because you can really be present and ask yourself these
Yeah.
questions, and maybe that'll help move it through.
But
Okay.
yeah, like you said, there's more issues because, and I wasn't thinking about it every day, but I need to travel at the end of June to see my family. So that's why everything is like,
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know how all of that plays out and obviously or anything, but
yeah,
again, remember that being able to forgive and then also having conflicts that still need to be resolved are 2 different things and also maybe still intertwined. But if you can work on the forgiveness piece of it for what's already happened, it could allow you to bring a different viewpoint and a different you to the conversation when you travel in June. You know what I'm saying? If you,
yeah. I
okay.
know that I have to change my where I'm at in all of this so that things can go differently, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it can help the resolution of the other things, I guess.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh
Yep.
yes, for sure. For
Okay.
sure.
So we just did on a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is that emotion for you now? Then also ask yourself, how strong was that emotion when this issue happened, or when you first really got hurt or whatever from this person? So I'm asking that so that you can sort of see, have I really let any of it go? Have my emotions diminished at all, even if this thing was a long time ago? Okay, if you could magically snap your fingers and imagine that this issue never happened, right? Like, boom, never happened. maybe that person was never in your life or just the issue never happened. What would be different for you in your life? Just be a little creative and see if you can jot some things down. What would be different for you in your life if you can imagine never having had this issue, this problem? Okay. How much energy would you have for other things in your life if you didn't have the energetic pull of what you're, yeah, having better self-esteem for myself? So that's a great answer. So that's Desiree's answer to what would be different for self-esteem. So remember at the beginning of the conversation, I said there's three things that block a life that's joyful, prosperous, and has vibrant health. And those three things are your negative beliefs, your harmful actions that usually get created because of those beliefs, and then holding unforgiveness. So self-esteem, right, would go to feeling joyful. And it might also even be linked to, well, they're all linked actually, but like prosperity, right? If your self-esteem was higher, you might have the inspiration, motivation, and courage to take action in other areas of your life that because of low self-esteem, you don't. Obviously, I don't know anything about Desiree, so I'm making that up, but okay. All right. So we were asking the questions, what would be different in your life? How much energy would you have for other things? And then just ask yourself, what else would you focus on? If you freed up that brain space and that energy, what could you possibly focus on that you're not focusing on now? Okay. So now we're going to make two lists. You could put them side by side, or you could do a paragraph and then a paragraph. The first list is, what is everything that you gain from not forgiving? What are the benefits of not forgiving? And be specific. Like it might be, I'm not compromising my principles. It was wrong, and I'm not going to forgive them for that. I don't know, I'm making it up, but be specific. What do you gain by not forgiving? And if you want to keep writing, you can, but I'll just share, obviously, then the next question. Maybe it's not obvious. What is it costing you to not forgive? What is it costing you? And I want you to really be specific and look at all areas of your life. What is it costing you? Why don't you look at your health? Look at where you are in other relationships or how you've moved on from those relationships. If you have, look at where you are in your abundance of love, abundance of joy, abundance of money, abundance of purpose. Ooh, over here, I think the chat's been going on and I haven't been catching it. Let me look in the chat. Okay. Okay. So we did all of that to really get clear on what the role of forgiveness or unforgiveness has been doing in your life, how it's been showing up, and what the impact has been. The work that I do around forgiveness is a little bit different than traditional forgiveness. Traditional forgiveness is like this. If I could, these are my words, but I would say traditional forgiveness is, I'm going to make a conscious choice to forgive you. I'm going to stop holding blame and anger. I might even figure out a reason why you did what you did. And, so I could justify, well, he did that because whatever. And it leaves me sort of like I'm the one taking the high road and choosing to forgive. So that's a traditional look at forgiveness. The spiritual approach that I do with my clients, that takes several sessions, is a different perspective. So I'm just going to ask you to like kind of play with me right now about it and entertain this as a way of a lens of looking at it. So what we do is we imagine that there's two movie screens of your life going on the whole time. Hold on, let me see what Sonia said before I dive in. That's the way we were kind of, yeah, I think so. Sonia's saying that's how she was taught to forgive. I think that's pretty much for most people a traditional version of forgiveness, right? Like I'm going to find myself big enough to forgive you because it's the Christian thing to do, because I know I should, because I've always was taught since I was little to forgive, all of those things. And because I know it's going to be better for me. But this spiritual perspective that I work on with my clients looks like this. Imagine that there's two movie screens of your life. So if you were sitting in your seat watching the movie of your life, there'd actually be two screens going on. One screen is your human life. It's all the people that you've known, all the things that have happened to you, the disappointments, the hurts, the betrayals, the successes, the accomplishments, the love, all of the human things. And right next door to it is another screen simultaneously rolling the story of your life from a spiritual perspective, from a lesson from, God looking down, or your soul, your higher self, that perspective of your life from the view of your higher self, and the perspective that our soul, so again, if this is new for you, just entertain it with me, but our soul chooses certain things to learn and experience and to grow from before we're born into this body. So our soul knows, I want to have certain experiences. I'm choosing to have certain life experiences. I'm choosing to focus on this growth or that growth. And that's part of our, the spiritual movie that's going on while your human life is happening. And from that perspective, when something happens in the human life, there's an opportunity for growth. and an opportunity to actually learn and love ourselves deeper than we would have if that thing didn't happen. So, have any of you ever heard of Dr. Sue Morter? Morter. She does a really good explanation of this. Also, Neil Donald Walsh is, he wrote Conversations with God. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, Conversations with God. He also talks about this. And so Dr. Morter uses this analogy that kind of works for me. So I'm going to share it with you. But before we're born, right, we all come from source. We all come from God. We are all, our soul exists before we're born, and it's going to exist after our physical body dies. The soul doesn't die. It's going to go back to that energetic field where it came from. Where we all came from is love. Every single one of us, every person that hurt you also came from that field. And so we know, our soul knows, and our higher self knows what we want and need to learn in this life experience. And so Dr. Morter's example is called the bus stop, because she's like, I imagine like all the souls ready to be born are waiting at the bus stop, like the bus stop to be taken down into their human body, right? And one soul says, I really want to learn forgiveness. I want to have the experience of truly forgiving and feeling that in my heart. And another soul says, oh, well, I'll help you with that. When we go to Earth, I'll be the one that you have to forgive. And the first soul says, oh my God, you would do that for me? Like, what a gift that is. Because in order to be the one you'd have to forgive, that means I'm going to do something bad. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to do something that really requires forgiveness. But I love you enough to do that so that you can have this life experience that is going to grow you and deepen your connection to yourself and bring you to another soul lesson. So that's the perspective that we take on in radical forgiveness, which is the work that I do with my clients. How does that sound to you? Is that like way off the charts? I see Sonia says that you've read Conversations with God. Yeah. So any thoughts about that? Okay. So I'm gonna, oh, there's Sonia.
I think I'm just going to have a good prayer tonight, a good talk there tonight, because I want to understand why he invented all this stuff. Why
Well,
do we
here,
have? I know it's to make us better and everything, but it's just, I just feel
well,
like I have this huge wall in front of me, and I can't go through it, can't go around it. I'm having trouble jumping over it. I understand. I connect with everything you just said. I'm a very spiritual person, so it's all that is fine. The higher self, I kind of got into that the last couple of years though, but it's just so hard.
it's a, so yeah, it's not easy. It's one of the most courageous things you can do.
Unconditional love is easy, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't have unconditional love unless you can forgive, right?
Correct. Otherwise, it's
But like,
conditional.
it's easier to, let's say, to have unconditional love for your children or anyways, but still, it's the
Yeah.
hardest. It's the
It,
hardest.
it's hard, but as you said, I can't go around it. I can't go over it. The only way is through it. But that's when we get the deeper perspective. So if you're feeling, whether you're here now or watching the replay later, if you're thinking, yeah, I just don't get that, it's really a perspective that kind of transcends just looking at life as just a human experience. So if that's your view of life, this would be a difficult perspective to get. But if you can look at there's our life as a human, but it's actually a spiritual, and this is, have you ever heard the phrase, we are spiritual beings having a human life? So I've heard that phrase, that saying a lot. This is actually even slightly different. We are spiritual beings, meaning who we are at essence is from spirit. So again, if you look at it that way, we came from spirit, and when the physical body dies, the soul returns back to where it came from. If you're a person who thinks nothing happens when you die, you're just dead and that's the end of all life and there is no spirit to go anywhere, then this would be a really hard perspective to swallow. But if you can get like, okay, the physical body is a finite part of my life as a soul, living in my physical body is just a very small piece of that. And the human experience that we're here to have is all about the things that don't happen when we're in spirit, which is being separate, right? When we're all part of the energy field, when we're all spirit, there is no separateness. There's just energy, and the energy is all love. That's the energetic frequency that heals us. That's the energetic frequency that we come from. That's what Jesus talks about all the time in the Bible. Don't fear. You need to love. Love is the thing, because love is the frequency that we come from. But as humans, we live a lot in fear. And our opportunity is to use our life experiences to keep moving towards love, back to love, which is where we came from. So that got into it a little bit more than I intended to, but hey, it's not a bad conversation, so that's okay. But that perspective then would say, all right, so if there's my soul and my spiritual self, and then there's my human self, and the goal of my human life is to keep growing and to keep remembering who I am before I came into this body, which was love. That's why the negative beliefs, that was one of the other things that I said blocks you. When we have negative beliefs about ourselves, not good enough, not lovable, not worthy, all of those are lies. Because as a soul, you're 100% lovable, worthy of everything, more than good enough, exactly as you are. That's the truth of it. And our soul knows that and is waiting for us to relearn that, to remember that. So these experiences are opportunities to step into that if we choose to, if we're ready to get the learning. I had a coach in one of my programs, and she'd be like, you either get the lesson or you don't. And if you don't get the lesson, you'll have another opportunity, because your soul, before it came here, said, this is a lesson I want to get. And there is no separateness when we're all back in spirit. So we have the opportunity to be separate here in our individual bodies and to have separate experiences, but always bringing us back to the truth of who we are. So that's the spiritual perspective of forgiveness, is actually looking at every person that has been in your life that could ask you, that you could rise to forgiveness for, is actually a partner in a dance for you and for them. And for them, that's part of their soul's experience, is to be part of that same dance. And when you actually get it, when you can actually own forgiveness, this is a step beyond what Sonia said before. You're actually not just neutral, you actually love them for the gift and the soul lesson that they've brought you. That's when you know you've truly forgiven. Like that's what was possible for my ex-husband and I. And I'm telling you, there were times, years where we barely talked to each other. And now I'm filled with love for him, not as a husband, but as this other person that we walked through. And I believe that our kids, particularly my daughter, was a big part of, hey, you got to figure this out. Hey, you're not getting the lesson. Hey, and but long before she died, I remember saying to him, because she was back in the hospital, back in the hospital, back in the hospital. And I said to him, there's something we're not getting. Like, what are we not getting? I could tell, I could feel it in my soul. And we kept not getting it until we did. But that's the opportunity from a radical forgiveness point of view. You could stick with the traditional point of view. To me, it's not as deep and it's not as encompassing, but it certainly will bring you further. And there's lots of tools to do that. For the radical forgiveness point of view, what I did was, as I said, that's a chunk of several sessions that I do with my clients in the big program. I pulled it out and I made it available as its own little mini program that you can do on your own if you want to do that. So what I'm going to do is put the link to that when I send you the recording. And if you wanted to do that, so it includes a couple of coaching sessions. There's like 3 or 4 different components. It's just the forgiveness piece, but you can see some sample coaching sessions as we walk through the process. And it probably takes about 3 hours of walking through the process. And that's just walking through the process, with me. They continue to work on it on their own. So it's not like 3 hours and you're magically like, I forgive everything. No, but it's 3 hours of doing the work. And then you keep integrating it and you keep working on that. So I'm going to give you that link. And if you're interested in doing that on your own, you can just do that. I really felt like forgiveness was such an important part that for people who were not at a point where they could do the whole Return to You program, if you could just do that part, it would be very healing and helpful. So that's why I pulled that out. And so again, you don't have to do that. And if that perspective is not resonating with you, do a perspective that works for you, but work on forgiveness on your own. You know what I mean? In some way, shape, or form. So any questions? What do you guys, what opened up for you and just looking at the whole picture of forgiveness, looking at how it's impacted your life? Did anything open up for you?
I think for me, like I love your perspective and I totally resonate with it. But for me, yeah, I guess it's just yeah, I realized it is a big component that I need to work through. And yeah, it's major, really. Yeah,
Yeah,
bigger than what I ever thought, really.
it really, really is. As someone who struggled with health issues myself, the anger that I held in my body for years and years, I remember being 7 years old and being angry. My mother had died when I was 4. My father remarried. There was a lot of conflict with my stepmother. My father was an alcoholic. I had a lot of anger, even as, 6 or 7 years old. And it just sort of kept layering. I did not understand about forgiveness at all. It was decades of struggling in my body, really. It was my physical health that prompted me. But as I started really learning more and looking and taking these courses and getting that certification, I was like, oh, it's not only my health. This is also why my relationships haven't worked. Who knew? I didn't. I was really clear it was his fault, right? Really clear. But it was here that when I did the work, everything shifted. So I hope something opened up for you. If you're interested in doing the radical forgiveness thing, again, I'll give you that link. If not, go and keep this conversation going. Keep doing something in the area of forgiveness. And what I learned in that training from the radical forgiveness really is when you are at the place, you're 90% there when there is no more charge, like Sonia said, right? When I'm not upset, when I don't feel anything in my body, there's no resistance, there's no irritation. I can see that person and be happy to see them. I can think of that person if I never see them anymore, but I think of them fondly. That's when you know you've really reached forgiveness. So, and when your body is not responding, so there's no digestive issues, there's no sleep issues, there's no tightening in your belly, tense muscles. That's another really important thing. Okay, so I have my spiritual mastermind starting in 2 minutes, so I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you for.
Thank you, Linda, so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank
So I'll
you.
get this out either tonight or tomorrow. I'll send you the recording. Always check spam if you don't see it because it sometimes goes. And then I'll have the link for that for the course you could do on your own if you wanted to do it. Okay?
Thank you.
Have a good evening,
You're
everybody.
welcome. You're welcome. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.